Have you ever remembered a game fondly, only to realize playing through it a second time that it's a fucking mess?
It's never an instant smack to the face either. It's always this encroaching sensation after you've settled into play that slowly and without you fully knowing it disperses the fog that was your nostalgia. It gets us all the same way.
Wait, this isn't... Oh, but it used to... Oh no. No, it can't be. I loved you.
Okay, maybe I'm a little more dramatic than most people, but as I get older and subject myself to analyzing toys for fun and profit, games I used to tout as being near perfect are starting to show their glaring imperfections. And the most recent offender is Gun! It's in all caps, you have to say it that way. Gun!
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
I know it's a Bible verse, but wouldn't it be great if he was just prefacing the Iron Maiden song? I'm just saying, Wild West metalheads, untapped goldmine. Wild West anything is relatively untouched nowadays, in video games especially. There was a short stint in the 2000s though, when Red Dead Revolver came out, when westerns were coming out left and right, and Neversoft was one of the first to the party with Gun. And you know how we all like to discover those hidden gems from the past that didn't get the attention they deserve? Gun is a hidden stinker. A game that was positively received and positively remembered, but doesn't deserve it. But it does meet the Western status quo because it has what any good Western game needs. A quick draw mode. Now the regular gunplay is a little loose. It's an early third-person shooter and there isn't much to say other than it works. Your guns all have huge reticles and as long as whatever you want to hit is inside them, you're going to hit it. This means lining headshots involves a lot of guesswork and sometimes enemies won't get hit where you'd expect them to because multiple body parts can fit inside the reticle, but enemy accuracy is just as lax as yours, so it balances out. It's not tight. It doesn't feel great, but it's balanced. And it means you'll be using a lot of cover during shootouts. Cover-based shooters have an infamous reputation nowadays because of how safe it is to just hide until your health regenerates, but to its credit, Gun doesn't use regenerating health. To heal, you have to hammer down booze.
Ah yes, whiskey! Nature's cure-all.
In Quick Draw mode, you don't have to worry about any of that as long as you can maintain it. Activating Quick Draw slows down time and even lets you snap to targets. You'll mow through enemies so fast you won't have to worry about taking damage. Unless your Quick Draw meter empties out and you're standing in the middle of a gunfight. You can fill the meter back up by landing headshots, chaining kills, and shooting projectiles like arrows and dynamite out of the sky. It's simple and doesn't offer much in the way of rewarding skilled players, but there's nothing like walking into the middle of a group of bandits, killing them all with one quick draw, and feeling like a rootin' tootin' badass motherfucker.
It's high noon.
There's only one other thing a Western game needs, and that's horseback riding. And cowboys, but cowboys ride horses, so if you have horses, a cowboy will inevitably show up and ride it, and this joke has gotten away from me, so moving on. Gun has the typical horse riding stuff. You can jump with your horse, you can spur your horse to make it go faster, but it's different, or at least it was at the time, in small but interesting ways. For instance, your horse is actually harder to control when you have your weapon drawn, obviously because you have less hands to hold the steering wheel.
Horses don't have steering wheels.
Well, of course horses have steering wheels. How else do you get them to drift? Your horse also has its own health bar, which means it can get shot and take damage just like you do, but spurring your horse too often or falling from too great a height can hurt it too. If your horse loses all its health, it dies! That leaves you A, stranded, B, surrounded by bandits on horses, or C, fucking stranded. Gun has an open world. A tiny open world, but not a poorly designed one.
That might be an overstatement. Got it.
Geographically, this is a great open world. There's a number of visually distinct regions, and they're all connected through various entryways. Enemies will even ambush you from shortcuts and hidden areas, letting you know that there's somewhere you might not have been to yet. Gun gets the player to explore it all by putting the only two cities on opposite ends of the map and providing multiple routes to and fro. But it was going back and forth between Dodge and Empire that the creeping feeling I was talking about earlier hit me. Shit's empty. Don't take my word for it. Here, I'll show you. Instead of being able to come across a wanted criminal or a group of settlers being attacked by wolves while traveling on the map, you have to travel to either city and take one of the missions you can find there. After that, the game will put you through a loading screen and lead you straight to whatever or whoever the mission is about. And no, you can't take multiple missions at the same time. You have to do each mission one after the other and run back to town every time you finish one, even if the next mission you take makes you go to the same place. The worst sin any open world can commit is be empty, but it's worse when it only fills itself in to appease you. Instead of feeling as a part of the world and interacting with it, it feels more like you're pretending to be. And it doesn't help that most of the missions you can do in Gun don't use the space well anyway.
Activities in an open world should be designed with it in mind.
They should be used to highlight said world, to make you notice and remember landmarks or cool locations. The racing missions in this game work because your familiarity with the world pays off. If you know the shortcuts and what area connects to the one you need to get to, you'll win every race with time to spare. But for every other mission that's about shooting people or herding cows, I don't even know why this is a series of missions, it doesn't really matter where it takes place. The terrain doesn't come into play. You're never chasing someone through a canyon or diving off of a waterfall. The environment loses significance. It might as well not be there. Strangely enough, the missions that make the most out of Gun's world are the main story missions. It's the only time we see a working train on the railroad tracks, the only time we raid a giant fort, and the only time we help break someone out of jail. If your story missions show off your world better than your side missions do, then you don't need side missions. And if you don't need a space for those side missions, then you don't need an open world. And if you don't need an open world, why have one?
Maybe it's because you can beat this game's story mode in less than 3 hours, and they needed something to justify the $60 price tag with.
I can't tell you what story Gun is trying to tell because there is no story at all. Villains get introduced in the same mission you kill them in, people you meet become your best friend and then die at the end of the next mission, and then there's this.
Where did you learn Apache?
I'm not sure. It's like I could understand what he was saying, but I couldn't quite speak it.
Which you can't make sense of because you can't. It's just stupid. There's obvious gaps in the story the game is trying to tell, otherwise these characters would have more time to develop and we'd actually form the emotional attachments we're supposed to have. We know it's a revenge story because it has all the beats for one. Family member dies, motivating the hero's revenge. Hero meets love interest is killed by villain that outranks the previous villain, therefore gaining all of the hero's revenge points. Hero meets comedy relief, saves comedy relief from death many times, and then defeats the final boss without directly killing him. So if there is a deeper message Gun wants you to take away from it, it's if you ever want to kill someone, you should make it look like an accident.
But we're never satisfied with that kind of interpretation on this show because a video game's message is more than just its story.
Get your yoga pants ready because this one is a bit of a stretch. If there's something you can learn from Gun, it's to take things one step at a time and to see everything you do through to the end. And that's just how it's structured. You have to do things one at a time in this game. It almost has a Buddhist-like quality to it. Live in the now. Worry about later when it gets here. Our protagonist is the sort of fellow who never strays from that mentality. He moves from one set piece to another following one lead at any given time. And the game is so short that you do feel almost obligated to do everything in it. And it isn't because it's terribly fun. It's because you can see the end from where you're standing. It's doable. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but it sure does make you feel good, and maybe that was what Neversoft was aiming for in the first place. Or maybe they just made a shitty game that I'm looking too deeply into. It shocks me to know that so many people, myself included, remember this game fondly at all. Everything is so boring. The shooting is boring, the world is boring, the twice used stealth mechanic
As she lays asleep, her shadow comes creeping.
is broken. Even the speedruns for this game are boring. There's nothing to exploit, you just play through the main missions. I'm convinced that the only two reasons we held this game in such high regard were that it was short and inoffensive. Gun simply doesn't last long enough to leave a bad taste in your mouth, and if like most of us you 100% completed it, there might be a little pride tinting those nostalgia goggles. But if you took the time to break it down to its basic elements, you'd notice a lot wrong with it. It's a fucking mess.
But I'm all out of hot air and you got things to do and places to be. Until next time, my name's GC. Remember that you are amazing and keep on playing positive. Ah yes, whiskey, nature's cure-all.